My sister stole my wedding dress and wore it to her wedding. At the reception, I stood up and said something that changed our family forever. When you hear what happened next, you'll understand why I had no choice but to burn every bridge between. U.S. The morning of Elena's wedding started like any other Saturday in October. Coffee brewing, sunlight streaming through my kitchen windows, and the kind of crisp autumn air that makes you believe good things are possible. I was humming while I buttered toast for my daughter Lily, age 8, who was sprawled across the counter, in her pajamas, still half asleep but excited about being a flower girl. "Mama, do you think Aunt Elena will like my basket?" she asked, swinging her legs against the cabinet doors. "She'll love it, sweetheart," I said, though something in my chest felt tight when I said Elena's name. It had been feeling that way for weeks now. Ever since the dress shopping incident that I kept trying to forget. My husband David walked into the kitchen, already dressed in his navy suit, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He's never been one for big family events, especially not ones involving my side of the family. His default settings are quiet, practical, and occasionally tired from dealing with the chaos that seems to follow my relatives like a storm cloud. "The car's loaded," he said, pouring himself coffee. "We should probably head over soon. Traffic's going to be horrible downtown." Downtown. The grand ballroom at the Riverside Hotel. Elena had insisted on having her reception there, even though it cost more than most people's cars, even though she'd been unemployed for the better part of 6 months, even though she'd asked me to help pay for it just 3 weeks ago. I'd said no, of course. Not because I didn't love my sister, but because I'd learned the hard way that saying yes to Elena's financial emergencies was like pouring water into a bucket with no bottom. There was always another crisis, another just this once, another reason why her problems became everyone else's responsibility. But she'd figured it out somehow. The venue, the catering, the flowers that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. She was good at that. Figuring things out in ways that didn't require her to actually change anything about how she lived her life. "Mama, can I wear lipstick today?" Lily asked, sliding off the counter. "Just a little," I said, distracted. My phone was buzzing on the counter, a text from Elena. "Can't wait for you to see everything today, it's going to be perfect." Something about those capital letters and exclamation points made my stomach turn. Elena only got that enthusiastic when she was about to reveal something she knew would upset people but was too excited about to contain herself. David noticed my expression. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said automatically. Just Elena being Elena. But it wasn't nothing. It had been building for months now. This feeling that something was off about Elena's wedding planning. She'd been secretive about details, evasive when I asked to see her dress, and strangely cheerful every time I mentioned that I couldn't contribute financially. The thing about my sister is that she's always been the golden child, not in an obvious way. My parents would never admit to having favorites, but in all the ways that mattered. Elena was spontaneous where I was planned. She was charming where I was practical. She lit up rooms while I organized them. Growing up, I was the one who did homework without being asked, who saved my allowance, who helped mom with dishes while Elena was out with friends or on the phone or dramatically crying about some boy who didn't appreciate her unique spirit. I was responsible, boring, according to family legend, but responsible. Elena was magic. And magic, I learned early, gets forgiven for a lot of things that responsibility doesn't. When we were teenagers, Elena borrowed my homecoming dress without asking and returned it with a stain that never came out. When we were in college, she used my credit card for an emergency spring break trip and forgot to pay me back for 2 years. When we were adults, she named me as a reference for jobs she had no intention of keeping in apartments she couldn't afford. But she was family. She was my little sister. And she had this way of making her chaos feel like an adventure instead of a burden, at least until the bills came due. The wedding dress shopping trip had been 2 months ago. Elena had called me in tears. Her original dress had been damaged at the salon, she said. A pipe had burst, everything was ruined, and she needed help finding a replacement with only 8 weeks until the wedding. "I know you're busy," she'd said, "but you have such good taste, and I'm just so overwhelmed." Could you maybe come with me, just for moral support? So I'd arranged for David to pick up Lily from school, taken a half day off work, and met Elena at Bridal Elegance downtown. She was already there when I arrived, looking beautiful and tragic in that way she'd perfected by age 16. "Thank God you're here," she said, hugging me tight. "I've been looking for hours and nothing feels right, nothing fits the vision." The vision. Elena's wedding had a vision the way other people's weddings had budgets. Everything had to be perfect, Instagram-worthy, the kind of event that would generate enough social media content to sustain her for months. We spent 3 hours trying on dresses. Elena rejected everything: too plain, too busy, too expensive, not expensive enough, wrong shade of white, wrong kind of lace. The saleswoman, a patient woman named Patricia who clearly dealt with difficult brides for a living, kept bringing out new options with the kind of forced smile that suggested she was being paid well enough to tolerate this. Finally, Patricia brought out something that made Elena gasp. It was stunning. Ivory silk with delicate beading, a sweetheart neckline that managed to be both elegant and romantic, and a train that seemed to float behind her like something from a fairy tale. It fit her perfectly, like it had been made specifically for her body. "This is it," Elena whispered, staring at herself in the three-way mirror. "This is the one." Patricia looked relieved. "It's beautiful on you, and we have it in stock in your size. So alterations should be minimal." But then Elena saw the price tag. Her face fell so fast I thought she might cry. "I can't," she said quietly. I can't." The dress was expensive, more than expensive. It was the kind of dress that cost as much as a used car. But Elena looked so beautiful in it. So happy for the first time in months that I found myself doing something I'd promised myself I wouldn't do. "Elena," I said carefully, what if I helped?" She turned to look at me, hope flickering in her eyes. "I could loan you the money," I continued, already regretting the words as they left my mouth. "You could pay me back over time. After the wedding, when things settled down." The smile that spread across her face was radiant. "Really, you would do that for me?" I nodded, ignoring the voice in my head that was screaming warnings. "Family helps family, right?" Patricia discreetly stepped away to give us privacy while Elena hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "I promise I'll pay you back," she said. "Every penny. This means everything to me." So I paid for the dress, all of it. Nearly $4,000 that I moved from our vacation fund to cover a dress that would be worn once by someone who had never successfully paid me back for anything. But Elena was so grateful, so genuinely happy, that I told myself it was worth it. She was my sister. It was her wedding day. Some things were more important than money. The dress was supposed to be delivered to Elena's apartment 2 weeks later, after alterations. But when I called to ask how it looked, she was vague. "Oh, it's perfect," she said. "Really perfect. You're going to love seeing it on the day." Something about the way she said it bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Now, standing in my kitchen on the morning of her wedding, that same uneasy feeling was back. Elena's text messages had been increasingly cryptic over the past few weeks. Lots of references to surprises and how everything was coming together beautifully, and how I was going to be so surprised by how everything turned out. "We should go," David said, checking his watch. "Ceremony starts in an hour and parking's going to be a nightmare." I nodded, gathering my purse and Lily's flower girl basket. But as we walked to the car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking towards something I wasn't prepared for. The drive downtown was quiet except for Lily chattering excitedly in the back seat about her dress and her basket and whether there would be chocolate cake. At the reception, David navigated traffic with his usual calm efficiency while I stared out the window and tried to identify what exactly was making me so anxious. It wasn't until we pulled into the hotel parking lot that it hit me. Elena had never shown me her wedding dress, not once since we bought it. Every time I'd asked, she deflected or changed the subject or promised I'd see it soon. For someone who photographed every meal and every outfit, who had been documenting every detail of her wedding planning for months, she'd been unusually secretive about the one thing that mattered most, the one thing I'd paid for. "You okay?" David asked as we walked toward the hotel entrance. "Yeah," I said automatically. "Just wedding nerves." I guess. But I wasn't okay. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the way Elena's friends avoided eye contact when we walked into the lobby. I could see it in the way my cousin Maya looked surprised to see me. Like maybe she hadn't expected me to show up. Rebecca, my mother, appeared at my elbow wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than my car payment and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You look lovely, dear." "Thanks, Mom, you too." She kissed my cheek, then leaned in closer. "Elena looks absolutely radiant, just radiant. Wait until you see her dress. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." There was something in her tone, something that felt like a warning disguised as enthusiasm. "I'm sure it is," I said carefully. Mom's smile flickered for just a moment. She wanted it to be a surprise. For everyone. She's always been so thoughtful that way. A surprise. My stomach dropped. David appeared at my side with Lily, who was clutching her flower basket and looking overwhelmed by all the people and noise. "The ceremony's about to start," he said. "We should find our seats." We were escorted to the third row. Family seating. The church was decorated beautifully, white roses and baby's breath everywhere, candles flickering in tall glass holders, exactly the kind of romantic elegance Elena had always dreamed of. The music started. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle in dusty rose pink, looking nervous but happy. Then the flower girl, another cousin's daughter, scattered petals with the kind of solemn concentration that only children can manage. Then the music changed. The wedding march. Everyone stood, and Elena appeared at the back of the church. She looked beautiful. Absolutely, breathtakingly beautiful. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless, and she was glowing with the kind of joy that makes everyone around her feel like they're witnessing something magical. But the dress was wrong. It wasn't the dress we'd bought together. It wasn't the ivory silk with delicate beading. It wasn't the sweetheart neckline or the floating train. It was white. Pure, brilliant white, with different beading. A different neckline, a different silhouette entirely. I blinked hard, thinking maybe I was confused. Maybe I was misremembering. Maybe the lighting was playing tricks on me. But no, this was definitely not the dress I'd paid for. Elena walked down the aisle, radiant and confident, meeting everyone's eyes and smiling like she owned the world. When she passed our row, she looked directly at me and winked, like we were sharing some kind of inside joke. My hands started shaking. "That's not the dress," I whispered to David. "What?" "That's not the dress we bought. That's not the dress I paid for." David looked confused, but before he could respond, Elena had reached the altar. The ceremony began. The pastor started talking about love and commitment and the sacred bond between two people. But I couldn't focus on any of it. All I could think about was the dress. The wrong dress. And Elena's wink. What had happened to the dress I'd bought? Where was it? Why was Elena wearing something completely different? And why hadn't she told me? The ceremony passed in a blur. I stood when everyone else stood, sat when everyone else sat, but I wasn't really there. I was somewhere else, trying to piece together a puzzle that made no sense. After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, Elena and her new husband were walking back down the aisle as everyone cheered. She looked radiant, triumphant, like someone who had just pulled off the perfect heist. "Mom," I caught my mother's arm as people started filing out. "Elena's dress. That's not the one we bought." "Is it?" Mom's face went very still. "Oh, sweetie. She didn't tell you." "Tell me what?" "The dress you bought. There was a problem with the alterations. They damaged it. Elena had to get a replacement at the last minute." She felt terrible about it, but there wasn't time to discuss it with everyone. You know how these things go, but I could tell she was lying. Mom had never been good at lying. Her voice got too high, and she couldn't maintain eye contact. "Where is it?" I asked. "Where's the dress I paid for?" "Oh, I don't know, dear. I'm sure Elena can explain everything later. This isn't really the time or place for, where is the dress, Mom?" She looked around nervously, as if hoping someone would rescue her from this conversation. I think Elena may have returned it. For the refund, to help pay for the new one. The world tilted. Elena had returned the dress I'd paid for, without telling me, and used my money to pay for a different dress entirely. "Rebecca, are you okay?" David was beside me, looking concerned. "You look like you're going to be sick." I wasn't sick. I was furious, but I was also in a church, surrounded by family and friends. At my sister's wedding reception about to begin. "I'm fine," I managed, I need some air." I walked outside, David and Lily following. The October air was cold against my face, but it helped clear my head enough to think. Elena had stolen from me. Not borrowed, not forgotten to pay back, stolen. She'd taken my money. Bought a dress, returned it without telling me, and used the refund to buy a different dress. All while letting me believe I was helping her. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the wink. That confident, conspiratorial wink that suggested she thought I was in on the joke somehow. Like I would find this amusing instead of devastating. "What's going on?" David asked gently. I told him. All of it. The original dress, the money I'd paid, the lie about alterations. The refund my mother had inadvertently revealed. His face got very quiet. David doesn't get angry often, but when he does, it's the kind of anger that burns cold and steady instead of hot and explosive. "So she stole for thousands, but I wasn't okay. Something was wrong. I could feel it in the way Elena's friends avoided eye contact when we walked into the lobby. I could see it in the way my cousin Maya looked surprised to see me. Like maybe she hadn't expected me to show up. Rebecca, my mother, appeared at my elbow, wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than my car payment and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You look lovely, dear." "Thanks, Mom, you too." She kissed my cheek, then leaned in closer. "Elena looks absolutely radiant, just radiant. Wait until you see her dress. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." There was something in her tone, something that felt like a warning disguised as enthusiasm. "I'm sure it is," I said carefully. Mom's smile flickered for just a moment. She wanted it to be a surprise. For everyone. She's always been so thoughtful that way. A surprise. My stomach dropped. David appeared at my side with Lily, who was clutching her flower basket and looking overwhelmed by all the people and noise. "The ceremony's about to start," he said. "We should find our seats." We were escorted to the third row. Family seating. The church was decorated beautifully, white roses and baby's breath everywhere, candles flickering in tall glass holders, exactly the kind of romantic elegance Elena had always dreamed of. The music started. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle in dusty rose pink, looking nervous but happy. Then the flower girl, another cousin's daughter, scattered petals with the kind of solemn concentration that only children can manage. Then the music changed. The wedding march. Everyone stood, and Elena appeared at the back of the church. She looked beautiful. Absolutely, breathtakingly beautiful. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless, and she was glowing with the kind of joy that makes everyone around her feel like they're witnessing something magical. But the dress was wrong. It wasn't the dress we'd bought together. It wasn't the ivory silk with delicate beading. It wasn't the sweetheart neckline or the floating train. It was white. Pure, brilliant white, with different beading. A different neckline, a different silhouette entirely. I blinked hard, thinking maybe I was confused. Maybe I was misremembering. Maybe the lighting was playing tricks on me. But no, this was definitely not the dress I'd paid for. Elena walked down the aisle, radiant and confident, meeting everyone's eyes and smiling like she owned the world. When she passed our row, she looked directly at me and winked, like we were sharing some kind of inside joke. My hands started shaking. "That's not the dress," I whispered to David. "What?" "That's not the dress we bought. That's not the dress I paid for." David looked confused, but before he could respond, Elena had reached the altar. The ceremony began. The pastor started talking about love and commitment and the sacred bond between two people. But I couldn't focus on any of it. All I could think about was the dress. The wrong dress. And Elena's wink. What had happened to the dress I'd bought? Where was it? Why was Elena wearing something completely different? And why hadn't she told me? The ceremony passed in a blur. I stood when everyone else stood, sat when everyone else sat, but I wasn't really there. I was somewhere else, trying to piece together a puzzle that made no sense. After what felt like hours but was probably only 30 minutes, Elena and her new husband were walking back down the aisle as everyone cheered. She looked radiant, triumphant, like someone who had just pulled off the perfect heist. "Mom," I caught my mother's arm as people started filing out. "Elena's dress. That's not the one we bought." "Is it?" Mom's face went very still. "Oh, sweetie. She didn't tell you. Tell me what. The dress you bought, there was a problem with the alterations. They damaged it. Elena had to get a replacement at the last minute." Elena's smile faltered for just a moment, but she recovered quickly. "Rebecca, what do you mean? I paid for a wedding dress that you returned without telling me? You used my money to buy a different dress. That's not believing in your dreams. That's stealing." The silence that followed was deafening. Elena's face went pale, then red, then pale again. "Rebecca, I think you might be misunderstanding." "No," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I understand perfectly. You took $4,000 from me under false pretenses. You lied about what happened to the original dress. And now you're standing here acting like I gave you a gift instead of acknowledging that you stole from me." People were starting to whisper. Elena's new husband looked confused and embarrassed. My parents looked mortified, but I wasn't done. "You want to know what investing in dreams actually looks like, Elena? It looks like working overtime to save money for your sister's wedding dress. It looks like moving money from your family's vacation fund because you think family helps family. It looks like trusting someone who has never, not once, paid you back for anything." Elena opened her mouth to respond, but I kept going. "But stealing isn't investing in dreams. Lying isn't believing in yourself. And standing here acting like you're grateful for something you took without permission isn't love, it's manipulation." The room was so quiet I could hear the ice clinking in people's drinks. Elena's eyes filled with tears, the kind of tears she'd been using to get her way since we were children. "Rebecca, please, it's my wedding day. Can't we talk about this later?" "No," I said, "we can't. Because there won't be a later. This is it. This is the last time you get to use family as an excuse for treating people badly." I looked around the room at all the people who had watched Elena manipulate and charm and steal her way through life without ever holding her accountable. "Enjoy the reception," I said. "Enjoy the dress. Enjoy all of it. Because you'll never get another chance to take anything from me again." And then I walked out. David and Lily followed me. David carrying a sleepy, confused little girl who didn't understand why we were leaving the party early. As we drove home, I felt something I hadn't felt in years when it came to my family. Peace. Not happiness that would come later, but peace. The quiet, steady peace that comes from finally telling the truth, even when it costs you everything. Elena had her perfect wedding, her perfect dress, her perfect story, but she'd lost something too. Though she might not realize it yet, she'd lost me. The phone started ringing the next morning at 6:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the reception. David was still asleep beside me, and Lily was sprawled across our bed, having crawled in sometime during the night after asking why everyone looked angry when we left the party. I let it ring. Then it rang again. And again. By the fourth call, David stirred. "You going to answer that?" "No." The voicemails started piling up. Mom, crying about how I'd ruined Elena's special day. Dad, stern and disappointed, lecturing me about family loyalty. Elena herself, alternating between sobbing, apologies and angry accusations about my jealousy and need for attention. But the one that made me laugh out loud came from my Aunt Patricia. "Rebecca, honey, I heard about what happened at the wedding. Now, I don't know all the details, but I think you might have overreacted just a tiny bit. Elena's always been dramatic. You know that. Maybe she made a mistake with the dress situation, but destroying her wedding day, that seems a little harsh, don't you think?" "Family is forever, sweetie. Dresses are just fabric." Just fabric. $4,000 of just fabric. I deleted them all without responding. For 3 days, the calls continued. Family members I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about my behavior. Cousins who'd witnessed Elena's manipulations firsthand were now acting like I'd committed some unforgivable sin by calling her out publicly. The narrative was already being rewritten. Elena was the victim now, the bride whose sister had a jealous breakdown at her wedding. I was the villain who couldn't handle her sister's happiness. On Wednesday, Elena showed up at my house. I saw her car in the driveway when I came home from work, a shiny red convertible that she definitely couldn't afford but somehow always managed to drive. She was sitting on my front porch steps, still wearing her wedding ring, looking like a tragic princess who'd been unfairly banished from her kingdom. "We need to talk," she said as I walked up the path. "No, we don't. Rebecca, please." 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. I looked at her sitting there, and for just a moment, I felt the old familiar pull, the urge to fix things, to smooth over the conflict, to be the bigger person. Elena had perfected this look over the years. Vulnerable but determined, hurt but hopeful. It was the same expression she'd worn when she needed help with rent, with car payments, with the endless series of emergencies that somehow always required my money to solve. But this time, something was different. This time, I felt nothing. 5 minutes, I said. We sat in my living room, Elena perched on the edge of the couch like she was ready to flee at any moment. For once in her life, she seemed genuinely nervous. "I want to explain about the dress," she began. "There's nothing to explain. You stole my money." "I didn't steal it. I borrowed it." "There's a difference. Without telling me, without my permission." "That's stealing, Elena. When were you going to pay me back? When were you going to tell me what you'd done?" "Because you seemed perfectly happy to let me believe I was looking at the dress I'd paid for." Elena's composure cracked slightly. "I was going to tell you after the honeymoon. I just wanted everything to be perfect for the wedding. I didn't want any drama." "So you created drama instead by lying to me for months." "It wasn't lying, it was just postponing the truth." I stared at her, amazed by her ability to reframe her behavior as somehow noble. "Elena, do you hear yourself? You took $4,000 from me, used it for something other than what we agreed on, and then stood up at your wedding reception acting like I'd given you a gift. In what universe is that okay?" Tears started flowing down her cheeks, real ones this time. Not the calculated tears she usually deployed. "Can't you be the bigger person? Can't you just let this go?" "No," I said quietly. "I can't." Elena looked genuinely shocked. "What do you mean? But I am sorry. I'm really, really sorry." "You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there were consequences. But you're not sorry for what you did, because if you were, you would have told me the truth weeks ago instead of letting me find out by watching you walk down the aisle in a different dress. This isn't one mistake, Elena. This is a pattern. This is who you are, and I'm finally accepting that who you are is someone who takes from people who love her and then makes them feel guilty for being upset about it." She stood up abruptly. "Fine, if that's how you want it. But don't come crying to me when you realize you threw away your only sister over money." "I didn't throw you away over money," I said, walking her to the door. "I threw you away because you taught me that loving you was always going to cost me more than I could afford." Elena left without another word. That evening, David found me in our kitchen, stress cleaning the already clean counters. "How was the conversation?" he asked. "Exactly what I expected. She's not sorry for what she did. She's sorry she got caught." He nodded. "You okay?" I stopped scrubbing and really considered the question. Was I okay? "Yeah," I said, surprised to realize it was true. "I think I am." 6 months later, Elena sent a birth announcement. She was having a baby. A little girl they planned to name Hope. I looked at the card for a long time, running my fingers over the embossed lettering and the professional photo of Elena and her husband looking radiantly happy. Then I threw it away. Some people might think that makes me cold, unforgiving, the kind of person who holds grudges over just fabric. But I learned something important that day at Elena's wedding. There's a difference between holding a grudge and protecting yourself. There's a difference between being unforgiving and refusing to enable someone who has no intention of changing. Elena will probably always be Elena. Charming, dramatic, convinced that the rules don't apply to her and that love means never having to actually say you're sorry. But she'll be those things without me. My daughter is 10 now. She doesn't remember much about her Aunt Elena or the wedding day that changed everything. When she asks about my family, I tell her the truth, that sometimes people who share your blood don't share your values, and that's okay. Family isn't just about who you're related to. It's about who shows up for you, who respects you, who loves you without expecting you to pay for the privilege, and sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is walk away. Elena got her perfect wedding, her perfect dress, and her perfect story. I got something better. I got my peace back. I got my self-respect back. I got my $4,000 back, eventually, though it took a lawyer's letter to make that happen. But most importantly, I got free. So tell me, did I go too far, or did I finally go far enough? Let me know in the comments, and if this story resonated with you, hit subscribe for more tales of family drama and the courage it takes to choose yourself.